Hello track gang, and welcome to what I'm going to call vlog 29, but this one here is going to be a little bit different. First off, it's been a while since I'm right. It happens to be July 23rd, 2022. Welcome to the Boeville in Newtown. And as you can see, I've actually got my normal non-working garb on. Well, why? Well, since I'm waiting for the park area to dry as far as scenery goes, I went ahead, well, let me back up just a second. After I put the first coat of spackling compound around the park area, I realized that it wasn't contoured quite right, so I added another layer of spackling compound to give it a little bit better contour. So I'm actually waiting for it to dry. I figured while I'm doing that, we're going to go down the history lesson, I guess is the best way to put it, and I'm going to pull out some old-time locomotives. Those that have watched the channel before know what I'm talking about, and if you actually paid attention to the splash or the screen that comes up saying what the video is going to be about, you already know what's coming. However, I just want to go over, I'm pulling out the very old sets. The old Bachman, DeWitt Clinton, Lafayette, and John Bull. Those are the first three that are going to come out, and then we're going to go into more of a, I guess for lack of a better term, steam train day. But one of the things that I found fascinating, and I'm going to go ahead and stop for a second before I actually get into that segment, because I want to show you something, and I want to explain the evolution of steam locomotives. So we'll be back. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a representation of one of the probably very first, if not the very first locomotive or train ever to run in North America. This is the DeWitt Clinton. One of the things to note here is this is an 040. As you can see, there's no pilot truck, there's no trailing truck. This is obviously a wood-burning locomotive, and the engineer, I'm not sure how well that's showing up on camera, but the engineer is actually out in the open. They actually converted stagecoaches to ride on the rails. Now, the reason why this one is still in the box, and not on the layout, is because of the fact that due to its configuration, the motor for this is actually in the tender, and it's a four-wheel pickup, four-wheel drive. If you notice, these are really tight. This will not make it across any of the switches or the crossovers that I've got on the layout. That's the reason why it's still in the box. Now, this came out in 1831. Not the set, but the locomotive. In 1922, we had gone from that to this. That is a 210-2, painted up for the Baltimore and Ohio, and this first came into service in, like I said, 1922. So in less than 100 years, we went from this diminutive little thing pulling stagecoaches to something like this that was pulling heavyweight passenger cars, which obviously I use on the layout now. So that kind of gives you an idea as to where we started and where we went. And this by no means is the biggest locomotive ever built. Obviously, there's others out there. Case in point would be the big boy, the 4884. So, you know, as far in terms of size, obviously, this is probably one of the biggest locomotives that ever ran east of the Appalachians. Then you get out west, and they had even bigger locomotives. Well, that was because of the grades and what they were pulling and everything else. So I'm going to stop here for a minute because I've got a little bit of a treat coming up here. So give me a minute, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're going to talk about this one first. This is the Lafayette. Again, the engineer is out in the open. This is a 4-2-0 configuration. It's got four pilots, 2 drivers, and then there's no trailing truck. This locomotive, how Bachman put this together was unique. This one is not driven by the coal car or by the tender. Its motor is actually sitting vertical inside the boiler. Again, still a very early locomotive. This one was actually introduced in 1828, so this one here is actually older than the DeWitt Clinton. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. The Baltimore and Ohio was introduced in 1828. This one here was, this locomotive was actually put into service in, it looks like 1837. So 6 years after the DeWitt Clinton, this showed up. Now, if you look at the cars, I'm going to try and do this without shaking it too bad and hoping that the light isn't too bright. There we go. They still look like, you know, stagecoaches. The only difference is now they're like 3 together on a platform. So that's how that was done, and it only pulled 3 cars. Now we're going to talk about this one that's actually out in front, and that is the John Bull. And that locomotive began service in 1833. So this was 2 years after the DeWitt Clinton. Now this one here is a 240. It's actually got 2 pilot wheels, 4 drivers, and no trailing truck. This locomotive, too, is pushed by the tender. The engineer, again, is out in the open, but now they've got a little bit of a cover over him, so he's at least somewhat out of the weather, I guess. And these, you know, don't look like stagecoach cars. But again, this is still very early on. I'm sorry that my uncoupling tool is sitting in the way. Let's get rid of that. But you kind of get an idea here. Behind them are, you know, 1950s era, 60s era, 40-foot gondola cars. And these passenger coaches are still shorter than 40 feet. So, you know, we haven't even gotten into modern yet. So this is all 1800s, and what we're going to do is I'm going to stop here for a second. I'm going to reposition the camera because I've actually had these running on the layout. So we'll be back. Okay, so this is the Lafayette, and then I'm trying not to run these at the same time because the locomotive, especially for the Lafayette, is so light that it has a tendency to bounce. So now we've got the John Bull. I just wish those cars weren't so dark. And like I said, it's funny, I didn't have an issue until, of course, the camera starts rolling. But there you go, they do run. Okay, I know I don't have these pulling any cars or any rolling stock, but that's okay. They will. though not much. These are very old locomotives. I've talked about these in the past. They've shown up on a couple of the live shows. They'll probably show up again on this Sidetrack Sunday with classic model trains, Ron. But at any rate, what we have is an 040 Docksider that was made by Varney, and later in life, not so much this locomotive in particular, but the shell and all, that was bought by Lifelike, and they reproduced it for many years. And I think now even, I'm not sure if Walthers is still doing it, because if you know, Walthers bought Lifelike years ago. But that was the mold. That was where it came from. Now, this other locomotive is also, well, this is an 040, this is a Docksider, this is an 040, but this is known as a shifter. The difference being that the shifter actually had a attached tender. The Docksiders did not. The Docksiders actually had a, from what I know, a confined coal bunker right behind the cab. Why? Because they didn't go far. They're called a Docksider for a reason. They worked the docks where the car ferries would come in and out. They were very short because of limited space. So these were used on industrial lines, kind of like my industrial railroad in the background here. Or if you were going into doing movements on the main line, then you would use the shifter, because it could go longer distance, obviously, because it had, you know, a spot for water and a spot for coal. So that was the point behind these two, and like I said, just like everything else I have, these will run. So let's go ahead and reposition the camera and see what we get. Well, one thing I just noticed is this thing is not liking the switches and crossovers. And he is sucking some freaking power, let me tell you. Alright, well, let's go ahead and give the shifter a shot here. It's amazing that that locomotive is 70-some years old and still trucking. We'll be back. Well, sometimes even a seasoned model railroader will come across something that he was not aware of. Alright, so these next two locomotives, I really never knew this. This is an AHM, or a Mahino, 080, and unbeknownst to me, they actually consider this thing a switcher. Now, this was under the USRA, which I believe was the United States Railroad Association at one point, that was dissolved in the early 1900s. But they actually considered this a heavy switching locomotive. I never knew that. I always thought that it was a mainline runner that went between towns, but apparently that is not the case. So then we go over to our other locomotive, which you can see the front of there. This one here is obviously painted up for the chassis system. It was originally a Chesapeake in Ohio, as you can see underneath on the cab here. Actually, maybe you can't because of the glare. But anyway, this is a 462. This is a Mantua locomotive. This is a, what the style of the locomotive they consider to be a Pacific. From what I do know, considering the size of the drive wheels, normally the taller drivers were used for passenger service because they built speed, where the smaller drivers were basically there for power, which is what they used. You know, they used those locomotives for moving freight. When we get into the 210-2 here in a bit, you'll see what I'm talking about. So if you look, you can actually see the size of the drivers here are fairly tall, but even on this switcher, they're a little bit shorter. Not by much, but they are a little bit shorter. But when you see the 210-2, you'll see what I'm talking about, the difference in those heights. So I'm going to let these guys run, and we'll be back. Okay, I had to actually plug the camera in because for whatever reason it's not charging. So It's charging. It's just the battery was getting low, I should say. All right, so we've got the chassis system coming across. I decided to do something a little bit different with this one. A little different angle. Get a chance to take a look at the actual depression over there. And then we've got the 080, and he's going to cross over the bridge. So here you go. All right, so we're down to one of the last locomotives I'm going to run. I've actually got two more that I am going to run, but I've also got two that I cannot run at the moment. One is in need of some repair, and the other one is, well, I'll let you know. The 282, my Baltimore and Ohio Mantua 282, needs some work. The last time I had it running, it kept jumping the track, and I found out that it had lost a spring on one of the, I forgot whether it was the pilot truck or the trailing truck. Either way, it's not running. It's actually at the bench. The other one is my Norfolk and Western J-Class 611, which I won from Tom over at Tom's Trains and Things over Christmas. I still have to do a little bit of work to that. If you remember correctly, after I got it, I tried to run it on the layout. It runs on the 22-inch radius, but it does not like the S-curves over here. So I can't run it right now. I've got to do, like I said, I've got to do some finagling with that to get it to where I can actually run it over here. Anyway, now we're back to the 210-2. This is an AHM model from back in the early 70s, I believe. And as you can see, I was talking before, you see how short the drive wheels are compared to these. And I'm going to try and get it to where you can actually get a kind of look. So this upper locomotive, this Mikado, or Pacific, is actually there's a Pacific, I'm sorry. The Pacific actually sits, its drive wheels are a heck of a lot taller, which meant that this was used for passenger service versus the 210-2, which was more than likely used more for freight service. And just like everything else I have, yes, it does run, and we're going to do something a little bit different with this one. We're going to try and watch it from the very beginning. So let's, well, first off, helps to switch the direction switch back on. It's the only issue with this tethered throttle that I've made, and that's the fact that there is a DP-DT center off. And if you actually turn power off to it, you actually have to take it back to neutral before you give it power again. And there's a look at the northbound throttle, which I'm not using at the moment because I've only got the one locomotive to run. Yeah, of course you would get stuck there. Oh, come on. Really? Everything works until you've got somebody watching. Okay, so is anybody ready for the European invasion here? This, I'm going to back this up just a little bit here. Okay, so what we have here is another 462, but this is obviously a lot different than you see over here in the States. That is because this is the locomotive for the Orient Express. And I'm sure I don't have these cars on this train correctly, but what the hey, it's my railroad. The interesting thing with this set, this was put together by Bachmann years ago. I'm not even sure what the date is on this thing when they sent this thing out. I'm trying to see if I can find some paperwork that would tell me what the date was. And of course, there's nothing on the paperwork that tells you that. Anywho, I'm not even sure there's anything really on the box that would tell you. At any rate, I've had this set for a lot of years. This set is rather unique. Again, Bachmann's infinite wisdom, putting the motor in the tender. I don't know why, but that's where it is. And I actually think that the traction tires on this particular locomotive are on their way out. But anyway, the rolling stock that came with this was not actually manufactured by Bachmann. It was actually manufactured by a European company, and I know I'm going to butcher this name, but the name was Jouf. J-O-U-E-F. Was the company that made the car, that actually built the car, made the cars for this. And you had a first class dining car. Sorry, a first class dining car over here. Jeez, the camera is not my friend today. And then you had basically a normal class dining car, and in German, these last two cars would be Schlafwagens, or sleeping cars. And Opa Dodge can go ahead and correct my enunciation of that. Anyway, at least a German part of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this thing a little bit of power and see what we get. I know it's not on the screen, but that's okay. And we're going to follow him on down. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and try and catch back up here. There we go. And I think, nope, it's still on the track. Okay, here we are back at it again. I'm quite happy with what I've got going on over here. There is a little bit of a concern. This raised area that I put here, it's kind of showing up. There's a little bit of an edge. I'm not sure. I'm going to try to see if I can get it to level out a little bit more. As you can see here, though, I've also gone ahead and put some of the spackling compound on this side, so that there's a little bit of a contour here between, or a little bit of a dip between the park area and the parking lot that will be for the park area. One of the other things of note over here was one of the other things that I was kind of working on the other night, before I decided I was going to run some old-time trains, is I tore up the sidewalk that was on the front here in front of the housing, or the shops, instead, I should say, because of the fact that I'm not going to need that. I'd rather have parking spaces here and then a one-lane road, so it's going to be one direction, going this way. The other thing, or the other thought that I've had while I've been messing with this is the road out in front here. I'm trying to move things around here a little bit. Pardon me. Okay, is this road that I put up in front here? I'm not 100% sure I'm going to keep it. Why? Well, I do need the parking lot. This here is supposed to be the parking lot for the car barn, for the interurban. I will need this crossing section here, just because of what it is, to be able to get from here and out that way, or even to come in. So what I'm actually thinking about possibly doing is going ahead and cutting the road here, getting rid of this portion of it, and then just turning this into another park area or something of that nature that the railroad goes through. So in other words, this here is actually going to be a playground over here. And this here would just be like a park, a green area, which some of the bigger cities actually do have. They do have a green area in their in the cities. So that's what I'm kind of thinking about doing here. It would give a little bit of, I guess, a little bit of visual interest, and it would also kind of divide the fact or hide the fact that the railroad here, the interurban, is actually looking like it's going uphill, when in reality, no, it's just level from here all the way over. It's the fact that the ground has sunk, or is dipping away. Again, that was done on purpose. And eventually I will probably have some sort of like a retaining wall or something like that on the shop side, and on this side it'll just be contoured again with the spackling compound, much like over here. Actually, I think over here we're going to do something a little different, something that I've never done, and that is work with the plaster cloth. I actually have some of it that was in one of the donation boxes that I have, so I'm going to give that a shot and see what happens. So I'm going to do a little bit more work over here, and then hopefully we'll be able to see some more progress, and maybe we'll actually be able to get the playground in place. So we'll see. All right. It's now Thursday. I finally got this the way I want it. It don't look too bad. I'm not going to do much else with it tonight. So that's kind of where I'm at with that at the moment. So this area is now done for the most part. There's some things that I'm going to do over here yet. And I'm still got dust over here, so I got to get that mopped up or vacuumed up. But anyway, so yeah, this is kind of what I was looking for. So the next thing is to go ahead and get this area cleaned up real good, and then put some paint on it, and then deal with, actually the next thing is I've got something I want to try over here, something I haven't done before, so we'll see how well that works out. You'll see that in the next episode, because this one, because of the train running, has gone on long enough. So you all know the deal. Wait for the highball. Green tracks ahead. We'll catch you all next time. Be safe. God bless. We'll see you.